Welcome to 40 Proof Crime. And thank you for joining me. I'm Carla. Going to look at some more torture tactics today. So let's do this. Tickle torture, is that really a thing? Yes, it is. It's the prolonged use of tickling to abuse, dominate, harass, humiliate, or interrogate someone. Even though laughter is thought of as a pleasure response, in tickle torture someone may laugh whether or not they find it pleasant. It can cause real physical and mental distress. Usually tickling is done on the feet and armpit, and I know we have all had that done to us. Also the ankles and wrist. One form of tickle torture is when a person's feet are dipped in water and then coated with salt. Then a goat licks them until clean. And the process is repeated over and over until the victims can't take it anymore. In ancient Japan, those as positions of authority would administer tickling, called private punishment. The tickling was merciless. Next, let's look at whole hanging. This was Japanese torture technique. Used back in the 17th century, this was used to force Christians to recant their faith. It goes like this. Victims were hung upside down by their feet. One of their hands were held tight with ropes. The other hand was left free so they could signal that they give up and are willing to recount. This is said to be unbearable. The body was often lowered into a hole often filled with excrement at the bottom, and a cut would be made on the forehead of the victim in order to let blood pressure decrease in the area around the head so they could be hung in this position longer, or at least until they recount or die. Oh, that brazen bull, maybe you have heard of this one. I could not even imagine going through this. What a horrible way to die. It's also known as the bronze bull, Sicilian bull, or bull of Phalaris. From Athens, Greece, named Perillus invented this bull of torture, and I can tell at the end he really wished he didn't do that. He proposed it to the tyrant of Acrogas, Sicily, as a new means of executing criminals. Bad idea. The bull was hollow and made entirely out of bronze with a door on one side. Looks and sounds like something you want to fire up and put some meat on. Yes, exactly. It was in the size and form of an actual bull. It had an acoustic apparatus that converted screams into the sounds a bull would make. Really, could you see that happening? The condemned were locked inside. Piles of wood were put underneath its belly and lit on fire. Then the unlucky bastard would be roasted to death inside. Stop a minute and think about that, what it would be like roasting to death. And you could not do anything about it. Makes you squirm a little, doesn't it? The story goes shortly after finishing construction, the creator told the tyrant that the bull was built for. Their screams will come to you through the pipes as the tenderest, most pathetic, most melodious of bellows. The creator believed he would be rewarded for the invention, but quite the opposite. Instead, he became the tester also. The tyrant wanted to make sure the sound system worked, so the maker himself was then tricked into getting inside the bull. When he entered, the door was then shut behind him and locked. The fire was set alight under the bull. However, before he could be roasted to death, the door was opened and he was taken away. It was said that he was taken to the top of a hill and thrown off, killing him. Phalaris the tyrant was claimed himself to have been roasted inside the bull after being overthrown. It is said that the Romans continued to make use of the bull for centuries to torture and kill Christians. The name of some devices say all like the breaking wheel, also known as the execution wheel, the wheel of Catherine or Catherine's wheel. The wheel was a torture method used for public execution, mostly in Europe during the Middle Ages to the 19th century. The wheel worked by breaking the bones of criminals or bludgeoning them to death. Yep, sounds fun to me. Convicts such as murderers, rapists, traitors, or robbers to be executed would sometimes better meant to be wheeled or broken on the wheel. These wheels were large wooden wheels like on a horse-drawn wagon. The wagon wheel. Often it had an iron rim, sometimes modified with an extending blade from the rim. The primary purpose was the act of mutilation of the victim's body, to disfigure, cause pain, but crazy enough not death. First it starts with breaking the leg bones. Then the executioner would drop the wheel on shin bones, and then work their way up to the arm bones, breaking and crushing them. And if that was not enough to increase the effect, sometimes sharp timbers were placed under the victim's joints. After this, the body would be braided into the spokes, which was made possible by having all those broken bones. Or they were tied to the wheel. Then the wheel was put in a upright position attached to a mast or pole, like a crucifixion. Then if needed, the victim would be decapitated if needed. And if that wasn't bad enough, they would light a fire under the wheel like being burned at the wheel stake. The body was left on the wheel after the execution to be eaten by animals, birds, or just to decay. If the broken body ever did fall from the wheel still alive or the execution failed, it was interpreted as an intervention from God. Now, people way back in the day were pretty inventive and, to say the least, very cruel, which brings us to the next device, the head crusher. Exactly how it sounds. It was made of metal with a plate positioned below the victim's jaw, which was connected by a frame to the head cap. After all set up and ready to go, the handle would be slowly twisted, and the gap between the cap and jaw plate would slowly decrease, slowly crushing the skull. This included teeth, mandible and facial bones, and of course causing a painful death. If for some reason the torture was stopped before death, there would always be permanent damage to the facial muscles and structure. While crushing the head slowly, their eyes may pop out from their sockets. To make things even worse, just for the fun of it, because people are evil, the torture master would sometimes tap on the metal cap with a hammer. Some head crushers did come with a built-in eyeball catcher. This next one is kinda short and to the point, and yes, literally to the point. My ass hurts just thinking about this one. Judas cradle, not as sweet as it sounds. It was invented in the 16th century in Spain by the Spanish Inquisition, by which the victim was suspended over a pyramid-shaped block with a sharp point. The suspended victim's orifice, usually the anus, was placed upon the point and was slowly impaled and stretched by the tip of the seat. Over time, the victim would sink lower and lower on the point, slowly ripping the anus apart until death occurred. How's that for a painful death? What have thought this happening? That is probably one of the worst tortures I've come across. Next is linky, which translates to a slow process, lingering death, or slow slicing, and also known as death by 1,000 cuts. It was a form of torture and execution used in China all the way up to the early 1900s. A knife was used to slowly and methodically remove portions of the body over an extended period of time, resulting in a slow and agonizing death. This torture was used for crimes such as treason. In a public place, the prisoner would be tied to a wooden frame. The flesh was sliced and cut from the body in many slices. This worked on 3 levels: public humiliation, a slow and lingering death, and as a punishment after death. The flesh was often used and sold as medicine. This next one looks uncomfortable as hell, unless you're into that kind of thing. The Scavenger's Daughter, also known as the Skevington's Gyves. Iron shackle, stalk, or Spanish frame. It was invented during the reign of Henry VIII. It's a metal rack shaped into a frame. The victim's head was strapped the top of the frame, the hands in the middle holes, and the ankles in the lower holes. The frame then could be folded so this would force the head down and the knees would be forced up, compressing the body, forcing blood from the nose and ears. You would remain in this position until you gave in, died, or the executioner decided he was done. And last but not least is the thumbscrews. Heard of them before, but never seen them, or wore them, thank goodness. This is a simple vice, sometimes with studs on the interior. The crushing bars were sometimes lined with sharp metal spikes to puncture the thumbnails. Most operated a single thumb or big toe. Really ouch. Some could be used on both big toes and all 5 fingers, or on all 10 toes. That is something to think about. Alright, that ends there. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please join me again. Please like and subscribe, it sure would help me. And I appreciate everyone. Take care of yourselves. Have a great night or day.